I'm going to go over this video kind of quickly. Um, I just went through the ones that you guys said that you need help with. I'm not going to go through any of the exceeding right now because the exceeding is above grade level. So seeing if you can apply what we've done in a different way. If you were finished this in class, then I went through it, some of it with you, but for this video, there won't be on exceeding. Um, so then from here, what we're looking to do um, is for questions. So I'm just went through the ones that you guys asked for help with. Now, for questions 1 through 6, you'll be able to use a calculator on your iPad and the cheat sheet, but you will not be able to use the other calculator for this because it will do it for you. But what we do is we look at all of our, because this is a square root since there's no number there. So we will look at all of our x squares in that cheat sheet and see which one of these divide evenly into 450. And 225 divides evenly into 450. So 225 times 2 is equal to 450. So then I know that this can be rewritten as 225 times 2, because that's what 450 is equal to. So then from here, you don't have to do this step, but just so that we can just focus on them individually, I'm going to separate these. So it becomes the square root of 205 times the square root of 2. And then now from here, well, the square root of 225, you can go to your cheat sheet. When you look, it will say 15. So that means it's 15 times the square root of 2. So remember, when we're simplifying these radicals, we're looking to see, well, what can we pull out of there? What perfect square or perfect cube or perfect number raised to the fourth power can we pull out of it? So then for this next one, number 4, it's still the square root because there's nothing written there. Remember, there's a difference between when we write that versus when we write this. When it's small and in that corner, we're taking the root of it. When it's written big out front, then we're taking the square root of it. So in this case, even though I see the 3 there, we're still looking at our x squareds. So which perfect square divides evenly into 98? Well, 49 does. And 49 goes into it 2 times. So I'm going to rewrite this as -3 times. So that's what this is meaning. We're multiplying whatever we pull out of here, we need to multiply it by the -3. So it's times 49 times 2. You don't have to separate them, but you can if you want. So it's -3 times the square root of 49 times the square root of 2. What is square root of 49 is 7. So it's -3 times 7 times the square root of 2. And -3 times 7 is -21. So it's -21 times the square root of 2. All right, so for number 6, this is saying 4 times the cubed root of 1024. So now in your cheat sheet, you will look at the x cubes and see which one of these perfect cubes go into it. And 512 does. 512 goes into it 2 times. So we can rewrite this 1024 as 512 times 2. So it's 4 times the cubed root of 512 times 2. I can separate these. You don't have to, but just allowing you to see kind of everything that we're doing step by step. So I can rewrite it as 4 times the cubed root of 512 times the cubed root of 2. Well, if you look at your cheat sheet, this 512 will come back to 8. So then it becomes 4 times 8 times the cubed root of 2. And 4 times 8 is 32. So it's 32 times the cubed root of 2. All right, so for these ones, you can use your calculator if you still want to for your iPad, or you can use the other calculator. And since I'm saying you can round it to the nearest tenth, you don't have to worry about simplifying these on a calculator. Regardless of what calculator you use, the x cubes will not simplify it for you. It'll just give you the answer in decimal form. So you can go ahead and just give me the answer in that way if you want to. But the difference here, the questions we were doing before might have been the square root of 726. So it was an expression, and it was by itself, and we needed to simplify it. Here, the question saying, well, what number squared is 726? And as we talked about in class, we know that addition, subtraction will undo each other. They're inverse operations, multiplying and dividing. And exponents, the radical, is going to offset it. So since it's a square, I'm going to take the square root. 2 squared is equal to 4. Well, the square root of 4 is equal to 2. So that means then 2 squared, well, the square root of 2 squared is equal to 2. So you see the square root and the square will cancel each other out. So then from here, when I take the square root of x squared, that isolates the x and gets it all by itself. Well, what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Now, this is where you guys have to think a little bit. And this is what I think one of the hardest parts of this test. 2 squared is equal to 4. but also is negative 2 squared is also equal to 4. So that means that when we're squaring a number, regardless of what sign it is, it's going to turn positive. So this is going to give me a plus or minus, and then you can just take the square root of 726, and that is 26.9. I'm not going to go through the simplifying radical. You can use the calculator for this, so I'm not going to go through it since you don't have to do this manually. But that would be the final answer for this one. So make sure you do put the plus or minus. For number 11, if I gave you x minus 196 is equal to 0, well, we need to isolate that x. So we would do that by taking the inverse operation and moving a number to the other side. So you're going to learn in the future, though, that not every single question is just x squared. The only time that we set it equal to a number is when there's no other variable. So if there was like an x squared plus x minus 196, we can't do it for this. But when it's just the x squared or just the x cubed, we set it just like we would solve a regular linear equation. So if we think about when we are doing our solving, we always started from the bottom and worked our way up. So I see I have subtraction and I see I have exponent. So I need to get rid of the subtraction first, and I get rid of that by adding it to the other side, just like we were doing before. So we get x squared is equal to 196. So I did my subtraction, and now I just need to get rid of the exponent. And we said to get rid of that, we need to take the root. So since it's a raised to the power 2, I'm going to take the square root. So I take the square root of one side, and what I do to the other, I have. Or what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So then, since it's an even power, I know it's going to be x is equal to plus or minus, and the square root of 196 is 14, because 14 squared is 196, but so is negative 14 squared, because a negative 14 squared is actually telling us negative 14 times negative 14. So make sure that you are doing the plus or minus. Nothing changes if it's a cube. We're still going to here follow our PEMDAS in reverse. The only difference is this time, it's not subtraction, it is addition and exponent. So to get rid of addition first, I'll subtract 343 from both sides. So now we got x cubed is equal to negative 343. And now when I go to take this root, since it's a cube, I need to take the cubed root of it. So that's going to cancel out my power. So x is equal to, and the cubed root of 343 is equal to 7. And since it was negative, it is just negative 7, because unlike when it's an even power, if it's odd, whatever the sign is what our answer is. Because when it's even, we have an equal grouping of negatives or positives, which will always give us positive. Whereas when it's odd, we'll either have that one positive left over or that one negative left over. All right, number 14, I'm going to write it off to the side. So x squared minus 16 is equal to 4x plus 4 times 3 minus x plus 22. And for now, if I give you a question like this, it's always going to end up just canceling out to just give us the x to whatever power it is. But I'm just showing you that when we learned solving linear equations, we simplified everything first. That means that we combined like terms and we multiplied. So this parenthesis I know means multiply, so I need to distribute this in. So it becomes x squared minus 16 is equal to 4x plus 12, because 4 times 3, minus 4x, 4 times negative x, plus 22. Then I'm going to combine my like terms. Well, I have 4x and minus 4x, so that's going to be 0, so they cancel out. And 12 plus 22 is 34. So x squared minus 16 is equal to 34. So in these questions, that linear term x is always going to cancel out, but just showing you that regardless of what type of question is, we're still doing the same thought process, the same first steps all the time. All right, so I need to then move this to the other side, because there's no linear term, there's no x, it's just x squared. So we're going to add 16 to both sides. So x squared is equal to 50. Then, since my power is 2, I need to take the square root. And when we take the square root of 50, this is x is equal to plus or minus, and now it's going to be 7.1. And that would be your final answer. All right, so for this one, we went through and said 2 squared is equal to 4, and negative 2 squared is also equal to 4. So you might know that the square root of 81 is 9, but if it's 9, 9 squared is positive 81, and if it's negative 9, negative squared is also positive 81. So there is no number that we square that can be negative. So this is actually no real solution. You'll learn next year, though, that you actually can continue to go for this, because there's another number system that we haven't talked about that we haven't learned yet. But there is another number system that you will learn, and it's called a complex number system, and it gives you imaginary solutions, essentially. They're not imaginary, but that's just what they're called. All right, so even though this one is x cubed, we're still going to do the same thing as we did. We're going to simplify. So I see parentheses, so I need to multiply. So x cubed plus 1 is equal to negative 3x plus 4x, because it's 2 times 2x, plus 28, 2 times 14 minus x. Then we're going to combine our like terms. Well, negative 3x plus 4x is 1x minus x. So negative 3 plus 4 minus 1 is equal to 0. So they're actually going to cancel out. That's why I said every single time we get these for now, they're always just going to cancel out. So it's equal to 28. Then we'll subtract 1 to isolate that variable. So x cubed is equal to 27. Take the cubed root of each side since that's being raised to the third power. And x is then equal to 3. All right. So these are the last three that I'm going to go through. And then after this, that'll be it. All right. So it says you're packing sugar cubes into a perfect cube box that has a volume of 512 centimeters. So this is where some people are getting confused at. This is what the box volume is. So we have these little cubes, and then we're packing them into a bigger box. And the bigger box has a volume of 512. So when we know that to find what the side length of the box is, so we know that the volume is equal to side cubed. So that means that the side cubed is equal to 512. Well, when I take the cube root of each side, our side is equal to 8. That's the side of the box. So each dimension of the box, if we know that this is going depth, is 8 centimeters, not the sugar cube. So it then says, if the length of the sugar cube is 2 centimeters, solve the following. So the sugar cube is 2. So how many sugar cubes can you fit along the length of the box? Well, if the box is 8 centimeters and the sugar cubes are 2 each, well, to fit that, we can say, well, 8 divided by 2, that means that we can fit 4 cubes. The same thing with the width. The width, since these are cubes, that means they're all the same size, length, width, and height. So it would be the same answer because the width now is also 8, and each sugar cube width is still 2. And 8 divided by 2 is 4, so we can then fit 4 cubes. For question C, it says, what if you double the size of the length of the sugar cube? So now that sugar cube is no longer 2, but we're doubling it. So now the sugar cube is 4. So the box is still the same size. So it's 8 centimeters, but now these sugar cubes are 4 centimeters instead of 2. So that means that we can then fit 8 divided by 4, which is equal to 2. So if we double the size of the cubes, we can then fit 2 cubes along each way. All right, that is it for this video.